Cyberbullying is a problem for many young kids. The fact is that they cannot seem to escape it. Today, we're going to discuss a new resource for you to help combat this issue. After I hit this music. Joining me this week is Forrest Bronson. He is a co founder of Digital Detox. Forrest, thank you for coming on my podcast.
Tim, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so tell me why you started Digital Detox.
Yes, actually, it's a beautiful story. My dear friend Levi started the company in 2011. We went to middle school together, high school together, and it started as this live experience and event company for adults, retreats and summer camps. And unfortunately, Levi died of a brain tumor in 2017 at 32. So the company went on hold for a few years, and I took it over in 2020, right before COVID. And the last couple of years, we've been focused a lot on working with schools around the world. We work with hundreds of middle school and high schools to help them kind of better understand how to approach technology in the classroom, how to navigate parents going through bullying situations. We do a lot of scoring and assessments. And then just about 3 months ago, we launched a brand called Camplight, and it's focused all on helping parents navigate this kind of uncharted territory with tech. And a lot of that has to do with cyberbullying and bullying to help help them get through those situations, not only for their child but for themselves. It could be very traumatizing for the parent. So yeah, DD's focused a lot on scoring and assessments and helping schools navigate policy, and also adults in general just find more balance. And then Camplight's focused exclusively on the parenting space. How can we as parents be more mindful, have a little bit more balance, model better behavior, and ultimately set our kids up for success?
What is that scoring about?
Yeah, so we launched the Dora score about a year ago, and that started as an adult assessment. You could get it at digitaldetox.com/score. It's a free assessment. And it's a really complex, it's only 5 minutes, but it's really complex math behind the scenes, essentially letting you know how much technology is impacting your life. So it's a 0 to 120 score with 4 different risk levels. And then we since launched that, a student version of that that can only be taken through a school. So a school has to administer it, and we license that out to schools around the world. And it's a modified version of Dora specifically for middle school and high school students to let them know how much technology is impacting their lives, and then also give the school really important metrics on how different grade levels, different genders, different groups of students might be impacted and areas that they might be able to improve.
When you get that score information, what does the school do with that? Do they cut some technology out? Because kids these days are surrounded by technology no matter where they go. Sleeping, when they wake up, doing their homework. What do they do with this knowledge?
Yeah, and the assessment isn't specific to all screens. It's a little bit more specific to phones and social media, right? And so we understand that, just by default, kids are going to be in front of a lot of screens through the educational process, right? And that's not what we're looking to gauge. What we're looking to gauge is how much social media and active phone use is ultimately impacting mental health, physical health, et cetera. So with a lot of that, it's helpful for the student because they're able to have some eye-opening questions of, are they checking notifications in the middle of the night? Are they interrupting sleep? Are they scrolling before bed? How are their interpersonal communications going? And for the school, it's really interesting because they're able to pinpoint certain grade levels of problematic behavior from a mental health perspective. A lot of the questions on there are sentiments from students on how much they want their school involved. And it's fascinating. Over 60% of students want their high schools to provide more resources around digital wellness. So schools can then take that information. Sometimes it's grade specific and then really drill down. Okay, we might have a problem with our junior year girls. How can we, create more resources around mental health? Other schools are using that to also then go to the state for other funding initiatives for mental health. Look, like here's our school-wide Dora score. Here's what it's showing. We're having this issue with mental health. We're having this issue with depression, um, loneliness, et cetera. And they use it to go get grants. And a lot of it's awareness. At the end of the day, we want schools, teachers, and parents to just be more aware of their sentiments around their students. Most parents and most teachers, they don't really know. They don't ask the
Yeah.
question like, "How are you feeling? Like, how is this impacting you?" We come up with theories as parents. We come up with ideas, and a lot of times that's us projecting. But with this and with Student Door, they're able to hear exactly from the students their sentiments on how things are going.
Are there schools right now that are implementing like a no cell phone policy? Like they can't have it in the classroom, it has to be in a locker, or they have to drop them off at an office. You know, any schools that are doing that?
Yeah, and it's across the map. Every school is different. Sometimes it's at the district level that dictates kind of what the
Okay.
rules are. Sometimes it's the school level. Sometimes the school have rules in place, but they don't enforce the rules. So it's a huge mess. So a lot of the work that Digital Detox does is we work with schools to kind of really understand kind of the culture and the dynamic of the students to come up with a policy that everyone's getting it on board with. And it's easier said than done because a lot of times
Yeah.
parents in the community will disagree with what that policy is, and we're there to help educate. Okay, well, here's why you probably don't actually want a phone in an emergency situation, like an active shooter situation. That's not a good use of a phone. That's actually more dangerous. So we educate them on all those elements. But yeah, to answer your question, sure. Like we have some schools that we work with where they have a complete phone ban. Others where it's you could have your phone in your backpack and you could use it during recess, but full stop, not in the classroom. And if you do, then it's confiscated. Some of them have different rules. So it's across the map. I've probably seen 100 different variations of school policy in terms of phone use.
You think there'd be a way to block at least the data coming through, like turn your smartphone into a dumb phone so the kid can still text their parents, but you can't access Facebook, you can't access Instagram. You think we'd have that technology by now where we could, like, when you go into the school, they can just shut that off somehow?
No, and they do. I mean, sometimes we have that, but
Okay,
a lot of times the kids will get by it, and sometimes they need it for classroom assignments. And in some cases, phones are
that's
actually helpful. A teacher will be having a specific app, and
yep,
it's easier on the phone, and so they pull it out, and it's part of the classroom lecture. So it's interesting. But yeah, some schools they are implementing whether it's a physical block or just a very strict policy on you cannot access social media while on school campus. It doesn't always work. At the end of the day, though, that's not really fixing the problem. It fixes the problem for 6 or 7 hours, which is still
yeah.
helpful. But sometimes we'll actually see an increase in binging once they get home because they
Yeah.
haven't had that dopamine hit during the school hour.
What is Camplight doing for parents to help educate them on cyberbullying, and what tips do you guys offer them?
Yeah, and kind of taking a step back, your point, back when we went to school, that there was a good chance that an adult, a teacher, a parent would see bullying take place on campus, right? It's a very physical, visual situation, and now it's in when you're alone in your bedroom at night, that's when it's happening, and it pretty much all cases it's going to carry on to school in some fashion. So yeah, it's scary, and for students, it starts at a much younger age now too. We're seeing bullying situations on Roblox, on Minecraft. A lot of YouTube early. If you're early content creators, a lot of bullying, and a lot of
Yeah,
times that's trolls, but it's starting at a much younger age. So in terms of Camplight, we're here to support parents just navigate this whole dynamic, and in some cases, we're coaching on communication. When do you approach the school? When do you approach another parent? And how do you do that? How do you create a safe environment for your child to open up and be in as much communication as possible with you? How do you support your child going through that? And in other cases within Camplight, we're just connecting parents and just creating that safe space for them to share their concerns, share their situation with other parents that know exactly what they're talking about. Bowling is something that's fascinating because if we're talking about anything else, screen time or learning apps, it's very common you're going to talk about that maybe at the soccer field with another parent. Bowling is
yeah.
much more sensitive, and it's usually not something that you're as public about. So that's why we wanted to create a safe space to connect with other parents and also with experts.
So is Camplight a app they can download to connect with parents? Is that what it is? Or is it like a
Yeah,
Facebook
so
group?
it's a full platform. You could access a desktop, mobile app, and we have expert-led resources on there, special events, live streams, content articles, and then also discussion rooms. So picture like a private Reddit, private Facebook group, but it's no ads, no algorithms, no kind of toxic uh, engagement, right? But where you're
Yeah.
able to kind of connect with other parents in a similar grade group, similar situation, and have conversations and ask them their advice and share tips that you've learned along the way as well.
How do parents approach cyberbullying if it's coming from a student from their child's classroom, but it's outside of school, so the school is not responsible for it? What's the best way to approach that?
Well, the vast majority of cyberbullying will have continuity on campus. It's not exclusively off. It's almost always going to be connected. And there's been a lot of studies on this. It's always connected to an in-person event. It might not be a clear event like you're shoved into the locker, but it carries
Yeah.
over. It doesn't end just online. And so, yeah, it's an interesting point you raise because there's gray area, and a lot of schools want to wash their hands. They don't want to get involved for the
Oh,
reason
I've
they
seen the
do.
policies. I've seen the policies, a lot of schools' policies. So they say if it's not on campus, but even though we know it started on campus,
It
that's
either
how
started
that's where
on
the
campus or it
yeah,
started online and continues on campus. So it's
yeah,
complicated, and every state's a little bit different, and every school's a bit different on what their policies are. But at the end of the day, like more often than not, we're seeing schools say, look, it's not our problem. You need to deal with it, right? Sometimes even if it's happening on campus, schools are just very adverse to getting involved. They don't want to connect parents. They don't want to mediate that conversation. And so that creates a complex situation for the parent. And in some cases, approaching the school can escalate the situation. So
yeah.
it's impossible to answer your question because it's so nuanced on the individual. What the situation is it isolated? Has it been going on? Who are the people involved? Where are they doing it? There's so many nuances. And with Camplight, what we try to do is educate you on kind of different parameters and thinking about things in different ways. And when you do approach, how to approach it, right? And in some cases, yeah, you need to nip it. You need to approach the school and get them involved. You need to have a discussion with another parent. Other cases, you need to have some more conversations with your child first to really understand the situation before you go full mama bear, papa bear, right? You need to
Correct.
make sure that you have the context and really understand what's going on, so you could approach it the right way. But yeah, it's tricky, and unfortunately, it puts schools in a really tricky position, puts parents in a tricky position. It puts obviously students in a really, really tough position as well. So yeah, I empathize with parents going through something like this.
I know there's some apps out there where you can monitor your child's phone without actually having their phone. Do you know of any apps that are free maybe not free, but what are some best apps that parents can download on their child's phone so they can kind of monitor that situation themselves?
Yeah, so that's tricky. There's a lot of them. You have Bark Technologies, you have a bunch of other phones, and in some cases, they actually just create more anxiety. Right? There's a lot of false positive reports, constant false positives, where you're getting, alerts about something, and your blood pressure rises, and it ends up being nothing. So, we're not a huge fan of some of those. At a young age, that
Okay.
could be helpful. Once they get into middle school and high school, yes, like there's still going to be a place depending on the child and the situation, but there's a lot of more fundamentals and foundation that you need to build first. Where I want to have a situation where my child can come and talk to me, and that we could talk about some of these situations, and I'm not having to constantly monitor every single text message, right? And that takes work. It takes work to develop those practices, and it needs to start at a young age. Yes, there's a place for some of those monitoring apps. I think it's beyond the scope of this discussion because I don't want to endorse any of
Yeah.
them, and I
Yep.
also don't want to bash any of them either because there's certainly a really healthy place if used properly. Unfortunately, a lot of parents don't use it in a good way. They're either using it in an alarmist way, or they're overreacting and ultimately losing trust with their child because they're kind of turning into this big brother approach, and that's the last thing you want is to lose that trust.
So, what's your tip for advice for a parent going up to their kid to look at their phone? How can we do that respectively without trying to interfere in their child's privacy?
I think it needs to start years before they get a phone, and it's having those
Okay.
conversations first, building that trust where they could come to talk to you about anything. Because here's the issue: middle school, high school, whatever it is that they get a phone, a lot of kids are hesitant to tell their parent about something going on, whether it's bullying, whether it's some fake news piece they saw, whatever it is, because they're afraid their parent's going to react and take that
Hmm.
device away, and so they then don't have any open lines of communication. That's the last thing you want as a parent, and so to answer your question, it has to start years before they actually get that phone, and developing that trust, developing that safe space, start practicing as a parent, not reacting, more being there supportive, asking questions, and being collaborative versus reacting and taking away, right? And most parents just don't put in that time though to develop that foundation, but it's absolutely critical. To answer your question, like, yeah, once they get the phone. So let's say you didn't build that foundation. I think it's
Yep.
very difficult to monitor and to look at the phone without losing trust. And so in that situation, we'd advise parents to try to encourage that open conversation, even if it starts later, and saying, look, like, and this is also key. We had a big session on this before giving a phone, is setting what those ground rules are. And what you don't want is to trick the child. You don't want to say, okay, here's your phone, and then behind their back, looking at their text messages, looking at their browser history. That's a violation of trust. It's going to lose the trust, and it's going to maybe in the short term give you some parental advantage, but in the long term, it's going to potentially be very detrimental. And so you want to set that tone before you actually give them the phone or social media or access or whatever it is. Like, here's our ground rules. Here's how we're going to approach this as a family. We're going to have some check-ins to talk about this. The expectations that, if there is something concerning, that you come to us and talk about it, and we're going to be open arms, and we're going to, be active listeners. But we are going to be looking out for some of these danger signs. And I think too many parents and too many kids, they view the phone, they view social media as this kind of activity device when it's really a huge responsibility. It's a responsibility as a parent to help coach on digital citizenship, and it's a responsibility as an individual, and in this case, a teen or a child, to learn how to use it in a responsible way. So I think at some point, I'm optimistic that a lot of this is going to be taught in schools. It's going to be just part of our curriculum, just like math and
Yeah.
reading and uh, cultural studies are. We're going to learn digital citizenship. We're going to learn how to spot fake news and deep fakes. We're going to learn how to communicate, via text message. So many kids they're given this device and they have no tutorial on how to interpret communication and how to provide communication in an
Yeah.
effective way.
You mentioned earlier there's a lot going on like with Roblox and Minecraft. In Camplight, is there like a program or app where parents are having the most difficulty with dealing with cyberbullying with their kids?
So with cyberbullying in particular, it would be for older age kids, it would be YouTube and Snapchat. Those are the big ones. Of course, TikTok, there's going to be some stuff too, but Snapchat's, probably one of the bigger social media apps in terms of bullying, at least for our members. At a younger age, it's again, like I don't want to make it like all Roblox is just this, bullying
Yeah.
cesspool. It's not that at all, but there are certainly some situations that could come up. And yeah, so at a younger age, it would be Roblox is a key point of conversation that comes up that we see in the forums. And with there, a lot of that's a great opportunity though to kind of create that bond with your child and gives them some teachable moments. Like, look, like if you hear something or you see a comment that just doesn't feel right, let's talk about it. Let's kind of navigate through this. And that's a great teaching opportunity on how to interpret messages, how to not let things get to you, etc. So, but yeah, to answer your question, younger age would be a little bit more for the Roblox, and then also text message if they're on text. And then for the kind of middle school, high school group, it'd be Snap, YouTube, TikTok.
Does Camplight have various like in-person programs across the country, or is it all kind of contained to your little community there
Mm,
and your app?
Yeah, not yet. So we're 90 days in, and the visions later this year is that we'll have local meetups and local chapters. But right now, that's all online.
The local chapters, how do you guys envision that starting? Have you guys thought of like kind of look ahead to the future here? I'm just thinking for my own community, if we have parents that want to bring more awareness to their social media, their kids' social media use and bullying, what would they have to do in order to kind of start that group with you guys?
Yeah. So again, we're not live with this, and it's in
Okay.
whiteboard form right now. And so I'll get back to you on that. Like we've had a lot of
Yeah.
proposals from parents from around the country, and in some cases they just want to have sort of an official arm and have us provide content so they could host their local meetups, and that's it. So that might be one form where if you want to be the champion of your local chapter, then we'll have a resource library to get you set up for success, and you can host local meetups. That's one form. Second is we're much more involved in some of the advocacy and reaching out to parents and helping form that. It's probably going to fall somewhere in between, but at the end of the day, like we want to help foster communication within communities, and so we want to
Yeah.
create infrastructure where parents have the resources they need, the tools they need, and kind of the education they need to have those conversations. Whether it's a small meetup at a home or whether it's active within the school. I want to be very clear though, like we're not anti-tech. So there's some groups out there that are, very anti-tech, and they're launching chapters for let's kind of ban technology completely in schools, and that's not us. Like we're pragmatic tech. We think it's
Yeah.
here, it's not going to go anywhere. We could pretend that it doesn't exist, but that doesn't really help anyone. And so
Yeah.
we just take a very practical approach. Let's look at the good, bad, and the ugly. Like what are some great uses of tech for our family and our kids, and what are some things that we need to be really concerned with and put our foot down, and let's find that balance.
Yeah. Especially with AI. AI is just moving so fast right now. It's fun and it's scary, but it's a lot of fun when you play around with it. It'll be interesting to see how far we take this.
Yeah, yeah. So AI is a great example. It's good and it's bad, right? You know, the case out of New
Yeah.
Jersey with the students creating kind of AI porn of other classmates. Horrible
Yeah.
use of AI. That's just
Yep.
unacceptable. But AI is also saving lives, right? And some of the AI that we're
Yep.
implementing in the medical space and other ways that it's enhancing our lives, it could be really beneficial. So it's not fair to have a blanket statement of all AI is bad or all AI is good. It is what it is. Like AI is
Yeah.
here, and so how can we protect ourselves against some of the negatives and some of the bad, and then how can we harness it in a way that enhances our lives?
Yeah. At the end of the day, it just comes down to parenting. Gotta parent your kids.
Yeah, well, yeah, I agree with that, but also I think parents, it's tricky for parents to stay up to speed on what's going on. So like ChatGPT is a great example. It's a huge issue in the
Yeah.
schools. Many parents, not most, but many parents, they have no idea how ChatGPT works, right? And so they're frustrated because it's this issue that they've heard about and it had like a lot of negative press, but they don't even know what it is and how it works. So I think parents need to get more educated themselves on some of these tools, so they can make a good educated decision on how it may or may not fuse into the family dynamic.
Yep, that part I understand, but what I was getting at is, as parents, we gotta teach kindness, we gotta recognize kindness, that starts with us. I mean, no one's gonna you don't want someone else teaching your kid about that, 'cause they could, you know, not go the direction that you want them to go. But you want your kid to if you want your child to behave on social media, it takes the parent to start that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it takes a lot of fundamentals on what is good, kind behavior, and then a lot of education on how to kind of balance that out. And it's tricky. A lot of parents don't do that, and so you might have, let's call it two parents in a classroom that are doing that, but then all the kids' friends aren't doing that, and then it's friction.
Forrest, if people wanna get a hold of you or find more about Digital Detox and Camplight, how can they do that?
Yeah, check out digitaldetox.com, camplight.com, and yeah, you could stay in touch with what we're doing, and we'd love to have you on board when the time's right.
Thank you for coming on today, Forrest.
Yeah, Tim, thanks for having me.
And for myself, you can always find us at our very own website, which is www.breakingbullying.com. You can also reach out to us at our email address. If you have a story of your own bullying to share, or for whatever reason you want to get a hold of us, our email address is breakbullyinghere@gmail.com. Now, if you're a victim of bullying and you don't know where to turn, there is online resources to help you. The first is the government's very own anti-bullying website, and the address is www.stopbullying.gov. And other online resource is www.pacer.org/bullying. Now, if you have had thoughts of suicide or of self-harm, we implore you to stop. Reach out to the National Suicide Hotline. That number is very simple. It's 988. I'm Tim Flynn, and thank you for listening, and we will be back next week to continue the conversation to break the silence on bullying.